Today we are diving into the chilling story of Mark Matthews, a devoted father who must confront a sinister family lurking just beyond his backyard. In a gripping tale called The Shadows in the Night, sit back, grab a snack and hit the subscribe. Roll the intro. In the quaint town of Bedford, New Hampshire, nestled between thick woods and serene lakes, lived the Matthews family. Their quaint, two-story home stood on a modest plot of land with a compact backyard, bordered by a tall fence that separated them from the neighboring property. This fence was a fortress of dense bushes and towering trees, its shadow extending ominously over their lawn as night fell. During the day, the Matthews could see glimpses of life on the other side, a family playing, laughter echoing through the air. But as dusk settled, the world transformed into a murky expanse where shadows danced and the familiar became eerie. It was on one such night that a game of Uno would spiral into a nightmare. The couple, Mark and Lisa Matthews, had decided to unwind after a long week. They set up a small table on their deck, a bottle of whiskey glistening in the moonlight beside them. As they played, laughter filled the cool air, but the joy was tinged with an unsettling sensation that they were being watched. With each hand dealt, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something lurked just beyond the fence. It was during a particularly tense round when Lisa glanced over her shoulder, her expression shifting from playful to pale. Mark followed her gaze and froze, his heart pounding in his chest. There, among the shadows, floated a pair of eyes glowing, unblinking, and watching them intently. More eyes appeared, one by one, like stars igniting against the backdrop of darkness. Panic washed over them as they stumbled inside, convinced that their inebriated minds were playing tricks. "We've had too much to drink," Mark muttered, trying to rationalize what they had seen. But deep down, a primal fear gnawed at him. They locked the door, and as they lay in bed, sleep eluded them. The memory of those haunting eyes lingered, a dreadful omen that hung in the air like a storm cloud. The next morning dawned bright and clear, seemingly washing away the terrors of the night before. Mark kissed Lisa goodbye as she left for work, their children still nestled in their beds. After dropping them off at school, he returned home, a full-time author with a mind often wandering into the realms of imagination. As he sat at his desk, fingers poised over the keyboard, the events of the previous night replayed in his mind like a broken record. He felt a magnetic pull drawing him to the backyard, a compulsion to face the unknown. Stepping outside, he walked slowly to the fence, the sunlight illuminating the area that had felt so dark just hours before. Peering through the foliage, he was startled to see a large family, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, their faces obscured by shadows, playing joyfully in their yard. They tossed a ball, laughter echoing in the air, but it felt wrong, too cheerful, too perfect. Unease prickled at Mark's skin, and he quickly turned away, retreating into the safety of his home. The normalcy of their activity contrasted sharply with the fear that had gripped him the night before. That evening, as twilight descended once more, Mark found himself drawn to the window. The world outside was cloaked in shadows, the fence a barrier to the unknown. He peered into the darkness, heart racing as memories of the eyes from the night before flooded back. He could see movement beyond the fence, a flicker of shapes that seemed to dance in the dim light. The laughter from earlier echoed in his mind but now felt sinister. Suddenly he realized the shadows were closing in, and he felt a chill creep down his spine. As night fell deeper, Mark's instincts kicked in. He grabbed a flashlight and quietly slipped outside, determined to confront whatever lurked beyond the fence. The air was thick with tension, and he felt exposed, his heart pounding in anticipation. He shone the light toward the fence, illuminating the figures that stood just beyond the trees. They were no longer playing, instead they were staring directly at him, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light, their faces twisted into unsettling smiles. In that moment, Mark understood the truth. These were not just innocent neighbors but something far more sinister. A primal instinct surged within him, a fierce desire to protect his family. He turned and sprinted back inside, his mind racing. He quickly looked out the window and saw nothing. They were gone. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked. "I'm fine, let's go to bed," Mark replied. Days drifted into a blur after that fateful night, the terror of the glowing eyes still haunting Mark's thoughts. He worked diligently to shield his family from the dark events that had unfolded, wanting to preserve their innocence and sense of safety. Yet, with each passing day, the weight of their neighbor's presence loomed larger. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mark sat in the living room with Lisa and their two children, Sarah and Jake. They were nestled on the couch, a game of charades in full swing. Mark forced a smile, trying to ignore the unsettling feeling that had settled in his gut. "Okay, my turn," Sarah exclaimed, jumping up with excitement. "I'm going to act out a movie. Ready?" "Go for it," Jake cheered, bouncing in his seat. Mark glanced outside, the fading light casting elongated shadows across their yard. "Hey, how about we all stay inside tonight? We can have a movie marathon instead," he suggested, his voice a little too eager. "Aw, come on, Dad. Just one game outside?" Sarah pleaded, her brown eyes wide with hope. "Yeah, it's not even dark yet. Just one quick game of tag?" "Please?" Jake chimed in. Mark hesitated, sensing the darkness creeping in. "How about we finish this game and then move on to the movies? I promise I'll let you pick the first one," he offered, hoping to distract them. Lisa turned to him, her brow furrowing in concern. "Mark, are you okay? You seem a bit on edge lately. Is everything all right?" "Of course, everything's fine," Mark replied too quickly, forcing a chuckle. "Just a little tired from writing. You know how it is." He shot her a reassuring smile, but deep down, anxiety gnawed at him. Later that night, as the children settled into bed, Mark stayed up, pacing the living room, his mind racing with thoughts of the sinister family. He peered through the blinds, scanning the darkness beyond the fence. Suddenly the shadows shifted, and he caught a glimpse of movement. A small figure darted past the trees and his heart sank. "Mark?" Lisa's voice pierced the thick silence as she entered the room, her hair cascading over her shoulders. "You're still up? What's going on?" "Nothing," he said quickly. "Just working on some ideas for my B-book." "Why do you look so worried? Are you sure it's nothing?" Lisa pressed, her maternal instincts kicking in. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's just, there's something off about our neighbors. I think I saw something in their yard. I just want to keep you and the kids safe." "Safe from what?" Lisa inquired, crossing her arms. "Just the usual stuff. You know how I get sometimes," he replied, trying to brush it off. Lisa stepped closer, concern etched on her face. "Mark, you can't keep this from me. If something's going on, we need to face it together." Before Mark could respond, a loud bang echoed from the back door, causing them both to jump. Mark's heart raced as he swung his head toward the sound. "What was that?" he whispered, fear creeping into his voice. "It's probably just the wind," Lisa suggested, but her voice quivered slightly. Mark shook his head, his instincts kicking in. "Stay here, I'll check it out." "Mark, wait," Lisa called after him, but he was already moving toward the door. He stepped outside, flashlight in hand, scanning the backyard. The night was thick with tension, the only sounds being the rustling leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. "Hello?" he called out, his voice steady despite the creeping dread. There was no response, just the chilling silence of the night. As Mark turned to head back inside, he heard a soft giggle, a child's laughter. He froze, heart pounding as he turned back toward the fence. Peering into the darkness, he saw a small figure, one of the sinister family's children, standing just beyond the bushes, grinning at him with an unsettling, toothy smile. "Dad?" Jake's voice broke through the silence, and Mark felt a surge of fear. "What's happening? Get inside." "Now!" Mark shouted, rushing back toward the house. He flung the door open and ushered the kids inside, locking it behind him as he caught a glimpse of Lisa, her eyes wide with alarm. "What was that?" she asked, panic rising in her voice. "There was a kid in the yard," he replied, breathless. "I think they're trying to get in." "Trying to get in? What do you mean?" Lisa's voice quivered. Before Mark could answer, the door rattled, a sudden pounding echoing through the house. "Let us in." A voice called, eerily cheerful. "We want to play." Mark felt his stomach drop. "It's them. They're trying to get in." He rushed to the window, peering through the blinds to see the sinister family standing just beyond the fence, their eyes gleaming in the dark. The children stood in front, their faces twisted, arms outstretched toward the house, while the adults hovered behind, watching with sinister smiles. "Mark, we need to call the police," Lisa urged, her voice rising in fear. "They won't believe us," he snapped, his mind racing. "We need to protect the kids. We can't let them in." Suddenly the front door creaked open, a sinister figure gliding through, their neighbor's wife, her face pale and eyes dark as coal. "Lisa," she hissed, a twisted smile spreading across her lips. "We just want to play, let us in. Get away from my family." Mark shouted, brandishing the butcher's knife, his grip tightening around the hilt. The woman's smile widened, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. "You can't keep them from us, Mark. They belong with us now." "No," Mark yelled, lunging toward her. "You will not touch them." He swung the knife, but she dodged effortlessly, her laughter echoing ominously. Mark turned back to the kids, who stood frozen in fear. "Get behind me," he ordered, positioning himself as a barrier between them and the doorway. Just then he heard a crash from the back of the house. "Mark!" "They're coming in," Lisa screamed, panic in her voice. Mark's heart raced. He had to act fast. "Stay here," he commanded the kids before racing toward the noise. As he burst into the kitchen, he saw the sinister children climbing through the window, small hands grasping the sill, eyes glinting with malice. "Get away from my kids," Mark shouted, launching himself at them. He grabbed the first child and pushed them back through the window, but more were scrambling in, their laughter growing louder as they flooded the room. "Mark, help!" Lisa cried from the living room. Mark turned, his heart pounding as he raced back. The sinister wife had Lisa cornered, her eyes glinting with something dark and predatory. "You can join us, Lisa. It's so much fun to play." "Get away!" Lisa screamed, her voice filled with terror. Mark lunged forward, knife raised. "Get your hands off her!" he bellowed, and with a swift motion, he thrust the knife into the woman's side. She gasped, eyes wide with shock, but instead of retreating, she laughed, a deep, chilling sound. "You think this will stop us?" she hissed as blood pooled around her feet. With a surge of adrenaline, Mark turned back to the children, who were now fully inside, their laughter shifting to something darker. He grabbed Jake and Sarah, pulling them close. "We have to go," he shouted. As they darted toward the back door, Mark felt a hand latch onto his shoulder. He spun around to see the sinister woman rising, her wound healing before his eyes. "You can't escape us!" she shrieked, and the shadows behind her swelled, revealing the rest of the sinister family, eyes glowing with hunger. In that moment, Mark made a decision, a sacrifice for the safety of his family. "Run!" he yelled to Lisa and the kids. "Get to the car." "But Mark," Lisa protested, panic etched on her face. "Now!" he commanded, his voice firm. As they sprinted for the door, Mark turned back to face the oncoming darkness. He could feel the weight of their eyes on him, the sinister family closing in. "You want them? You'll have to go through me," he shouted, brandishing the knife one last time. The shadows lunged, and Mark fought with every ounce of strength, slashing at the figures that swarmed around him. He could hear his family's footsteps pounding toward safety, but he knew this was the end. As the darkness enveloped him, he felt a surge of relief, knowing he had done everything to protect them. In those final moments, he whispered a prayer, a promise that he would always watch over them. The last thing he saw were the glowing eyes of the sinister family, but he stood firm, ready to face the shadows, sacrificing himself for the light of his family's future.